I'm super excited to be here today. My name is Liza Wheel, and I am the founder of Gatehouse Admissions. And I am always so delighted to jump on a presentation with GMAT Club and get a chance to speak with all of you. Today's session, just as a heads up, I'm going to tell you all of this a few times. This is a Q&A session. So what we talk about, it really depends on what you want to talk about. And I love these kind of AMAs. They're a lot of fun and really gives me a chance to get to know what's on your mind at this time in your journey in applying to business school. But first, before we jump into the Q&A, and I would encourage you to, use the Q&A feature. Let me know what's on your mind. I've got a selection of topics you'll see in a few slides, but that's what we'll be using today. But first, I'm going to just share a little bit more about Gatehouse Admissions and myself so you know who you're talking to. So Gatehouse Admissions, I founded Gatehouse Admissions, gosh, about 5 years ago. I have this bullet here that is very kind of bold. Gatehouse Admissions was founded by one of the most highly rated admissions consultants in the industry, and that's me. And you can see all those reviews actually on GMAT Club. I encourage you to. But anyway, more enough of my boasting. Let me just tell you a little bit about me. I am an MIT Sloan alum. I did my MBA at MIT and had a fantastic time. So it probably is not that much of a surprise to people who knew me when I was in business school that I now do this coaching because I just had such a transformative experience myself. I then, after graduating business school, I actually was at Bain and Company for a few years as a management consultant. Loved my time there, and it was actually at Bain when I started doing this. A few of the associate consultants that I was managing on my client work teams were applying to business school, and I said, "Hey, I'll read your essays," and that began what has become the past really 20 years of experience, 12 years of experience full time um, coaching folks like you on the MBA admissions process. Just a few more things on us, but really our focus is just white glove service to folks that are applying to business school, especially M7, even the top three. That's sort of our sweet spot, which is kind of impossible to say given how incredibly challenging it is to get into any one of those programs, but that is really where we focus. And we are maniacal about our results. We're really proud of our results. Over 85% of any of our clients applying to Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton, those three, will get into one of those programs. So, which is great, and we outperform the market rate by 3x across any both the interview stage and the acceptance stage. I'll let you look at the rest. Let's jump into the good stuff. I already see some questions coming out, which is awesome. I just want to flip this slide and just give you guys some potential discussion topics. Again, what we talk about is completely up to you. I've already seen some questions and I'm excited to dig in. But here are just some ideas. We can, a big news out there in the world of MBA admissions is Harvard released new essay questions this year, the first time in over at least 12 years. Minus 1 year, they flipped out and did, or they like swapped in one new question just for 1 year, and then went back to what more do you want us to know? And now they have three shorter essay questions. So we learned a lot in round one. Happy to talk about any of those. How to prioritize in round two. You're about 2 months out. You've got a lot of work to do, no matter where you are in this process. It's a reality. Even those who start well in advance, there is a scramble that happens as you get closer to the deadlines. If you want to talk about school selection, my mantra is diversify your risk. It's just like you would invest your money. You want to make sure for any reach or risky application, you've got some safer ones in your basket. That'd be my philosophy. You might be looking at round one. It's not too early. It's not that far away. It feels it, but I'm happy to share some tips on what to do now, what you should be thinking about now as you gear up for the end of the year if you're applying next year. Selecting an MBA admissions coach, that I don't know if that's a normal topic or not, but I did speak with somebody yesterday who said that they were doing about 13 different calls with admissions firms. And I was like, whoa, that's a lot of time to invest in this. So, if you wanted any tips on how to think about, partnering with somebody or not, I'm happy to take that. And then really open it up to just about anything that's on your mind. Brainstorming, essay writing, resume, LORs, letters of rec, interview prep, or videos. All right, that's enough of me talking. Well, I'll keep talking, but I'll be answering your questions at this point. So I'm going to try to go through these. I'm using the upvote, so if if you see a question you like and you want to make sure I answer it, make sure you use that. But I'm going to go ahead and read the questions so that you can hear, and then definitely, keep the questions coming. So, and unfortunately, the one little annoying thing is I can't quite. You know what? Here, I'm going to try this. We're going to make sure. Okay. Uh, Let's see. Sadi, this is the first question. Is there any app fee waiver? If yes, how to apply for it? That's a great question and one I don't know a firm answer on it. What I would say, I know that there are ways to get a fee waiver. And some are like certain programs that you're going to apply through. Like, for example, there's consortium that has very specific requirements, or they have a very specific mission in mind, but that's one way to get a reduced fee for applying to multiple schools. There's also different organizations that you might be able to join that would give you those fee waivers. But beyond that, the most important thing I would do is just check out the schools you're looking at and see if they have an application process for a fee waiver. I think the schools are really eager to make their programs accessible, certainly the application process more accessible to more people. So my best guidance there, Sadi, is just to go ahead and look at the schools that you're considering and Google like fee waiver, or even write to the admissions team and ask if there's a process to apply for the fee waiver. It's a great question. And it can add up, like that, going back to that idea of, school selection and diversifying your risk. It is important to do that. And like the fees will add up, but I will still say you still want some quote safer options in your mix. So make sure that you're budgeting for that as well. Okay, let's see. The next question is from Robin. I want to know about experience required for MBA, admission of MBA. I have collective experience of 4 years. Recently, I engaged in corporate as a financial assistant since 2003. I want to know if I qualify for admissions process for fall 2026. So, one thing you'll hear me say a million times because we don't have that long, but probably well over a dozen times is this. It depends, and there's no necessarily firm requirement for experience. However, what I want to empower you guys to do is, instead of thinking of like, do I qualify, which is a valid question, and I'm happy to dig into that, I want you to think about a little bit about the perspective of the schools. The schools are promising to anyone in their classrooms that they will have a exciting learning experience that is informed by their peers. So it's not just the professor that is giving the presentation, right? It is the discussion that ensues that's based on a lot of peer-to-peer learning. So what the schools are trying to assess as they review your work experience or lack thereof is, will you have enough to add to and contribute to the conversation? And do you have enough experience to actually leverage the learnings from other folks in the classroom? So I say all that, I'll get a little bit more specific, but that's why work experience is so important. This is a professional degree. It is designed to leverage the learning that the classroom has accrued prior to joining the classroom. So keep that in mind. And so it's not like a threshold. Oh, like, but that is the reason why they're looking for work experience. Now, whether or not the thing they really look at is full-time work experience, so not internships, not summer jobs, not part-time jobs, but full-time work experience. And most of the schools, this is going to vary a little bit, like, and there's always exceptions too, but most of the schools, that sweet spot of years of experience is like 4 to 5 years at matriculation. I would even say like 4 to 6 years at matriculation, or 5 to 6 years. But if you're at if you have 4 years at matriculation, and so Robin, I'm not 100% sure if you were thinking of applying for matriculation, sorry, if you're applying in fall 25 for matriculation in fall 26, or if you were thinking of applying in fall 26 for matriculation in fall 27. But the way to think about that is, you know, if you are matriculating with 4 years of experience, it means you're applying likely when you have 3 years of experience. And that's just a way to think about the math. So that's the sweet spot is like 4 to 6 years at the time of matriculation. Are there exceptions? Yes, but that's what they are. They are exceptions. And whether or not you're going to qualify, I don't know, qualify is the wrong word, whether or not they're going to see your, if you have limited work experience as a worthy exception, it's going to depend a little bit on everything else, right? Because again, they're looking at what you can contribute and learn from the classroom. So they're going to look for stellar leadership or incredible initiative or ways that you have really outperformed your job as it's currently defined. To say, okay, I've only been working for 2 years full time, but I've had such an incredible experience. Well, that might give them some reason to say, all right, that it makes sense. I see a few questions on experience, so that I think should address a few of them. I will say some schools. The other thing is like this is also a process of give and take. So if you are submitting an application, if it's light in one area, such as work experience, you want to make sure that you're extra strong in other areas. And one area is definitely that test score. Um, that one I mentioned mostly because it's still probably in your control as opposed to your undergrad performance, which is no longer in control, but you should still consider your undergrad performance. If your undergrad performance wasn't that strong, your test score isn't that strong, and you have limited years of experience, and maybe you haven't been doing an incredible job at work, probably there you're going to need to wait or you're going to need to change the schools that you're looking at. So hopefully that helps. I know that went long, but I just want to give you a background to help you understand how the schools really think about work experience and why. And so this is to Karen Shot. I don't have work experience. Can I apply to MIT? Um, you certainly can. There's two things. Number one, there is the program when you're still in college to apply, and that is something you can take advantage of at many of the programs at MIT, at Wharton, at Columbia, Harvard, Stanford. I think Booth, Kellogg. I mean, basically, lots of the programs have this. I mean, it's crazy. We should not feel sorry for the business schools, but they are fighting for the more applicants and the best applicants. So they're giving people every option to sort of submit their name into the process. So if you are still in school, you can absolutely still apply, but the assumption is that you will then go work for a few years before matriculating. So I'm not sure, Karanja, if that is your specific question, like if you're still in college or university. But yes, you can apply directly, but you will be expected to go work for several years, a few years before going to business school. So that's an option. I'm happy to talk more about that. I'll let you guys ask questions about it if those sort of the- they call it early applicant. They call it the deferred application, the 2+2 program, the Silver Scholars at Yale. Yale has another one. So there's a number of different programs, but I'm happy to talk about those if you'd like. If let's say you've graduated and you've been looking for a job, or you're currently like, I think my other question, my other response is if you don't have a job and you want to go immediately to business school, that's going to be a lot harder. Again, maybe if you're an entrepreneur and really have had this kind of history of entrepreneurship or gotten some work experience elsewhere, I know years ago we had a client who applied with 1 year of experience. I think she had 1 year of experience to MIT and she got in. But that's a rarity, a really, really big rarity. So I don't want you to count on it. Okay, so let's see. This is a question from Sadi. How do the scholarships vary from round one to round two? Okay, so my favorite answer, my least favorite answer, but I've got to use it. It depends. Depends on the school. A lot of the schools actually have funds pooled for each round. I was talking to the admissions director of Wharton last year, and she was talking about how like they have a certain amount of money that's available for round one, a certain money for round two. They have a pretty complex model that no that kind of determines how to allocate it, when to allocate it, but that there still is scholarship money in round two. Columbia as well, the way it worked last year, I know, and kind of like it always, schools are always up to if they want to change this process or not. But Columbia, what they did last year was basically they made acceptances in round one, of course, but they did not reveal any scholarship information. They revealed all their scholarship information much later after the round two deadlines. And so some of those round two applicants also got money as well. And the round one applicants who were accepted were like, whoa, I just got an email from Columbia. And I don't know what it was, maybe March, that they had gotten money tied to their acceptance. So, what I would say is the schools are smart enough. They know that there's going to be a lot of applicants in round two that they want. So, the schools will still have some, for the large part, on the whole, most of the schools will still have money in round two. Um, but the thing with scholarships is really, it's kind of a black box. They don't post a lot of information on it. It is, in general, the schools award it on a merit basis. So, again, if scholarships are important, you have to make sure that you are giving them something super strong in return for that shot at getting money. This is where like things like a test score or a really an experience that's really unique and additive to the program could increase your chances of scholarship. And then the other thing I always say is like consider again expanding your school list. There are a lot of great programs out there, and I can tell you as somebody who did not receive scholarship and spent a lot of time paying off those loans, it, to me, I think it's really like awesome when I hear about people who have got scholarships to go to school, like merit scholarships to go to these programs. And to me, the trade-off, if it is quote a lower ranked school, but they're willing to give you money, that's a pretty big trade. Like that's a worthwhile trade-off in my mind. Having gone to a school that I loved and had an amazing time, but still it's a huge investment. And if I had gotten and I think merit scholarships have gotten more not common, but the schools have more endowments and stuff, but and they're willing to sort of pay to play. They want great talent in those classrooms, but to me, that's a very, very valid trade-off. If scholarships are important, then I would definitely expand your school list. It's all about the outcomes, but if you're coming out of school with minimal debt, you're at a huge advantage in terms of life choices you're making for yourself too. Okay, let's see what else. What else? I'm gonna refresh and hopefully not re. Okay, I already answered those guys. What are the diversity scholarships available? This is the DAT. Um, let's see. I don't know if that was in specific regards to something. Um, but I think that here's the thing with scholarships. So I'm not sure what specific the diversity scholarships differ. What I would say is spend a lot of time Googling, look at the schools as well. Some of the programs themselves offer specific scholarships that you can even apply for. Those are rare. They're getting fewer and far between, but there are still some schools that do. I think Haas is an example. They have some specific scholarships available. But the other thing I would just say is Google. But really, these merit scholarships sometimes are, they're looking for people that will add diversity in all shapes and sizes of the definition of the word, that will influence where those merit scholarships, even though they're not necessarily like I think the diversity one, it's just really hard to define that. So the schools with their merit scholarships sort of award that in different shapes and sizes already too. Um, okay, Palomi, how can I justify a career break or gap year in my application? Great question. So it is. So I think what's important, if you think about it from the school's point of view again, I say that just to so that you understand it's not about gaming the system. I really want you to think about their perspective, right? So if they see somebody who maybe is I don't know, like upper 20s, mid 20s who's taken a year off, that's that's fine. That's your prerogative. And we'll talk about how to deal with it. But what they are thinking about is like, we need to make sure the mouths on the other side of this process, the recruiters, are going to recruit all of our students and that we've got a great program and everybody's happy, right? So what when they see that gap, what they're trying to assess is like, okay, are recruiters on the other side going to be concerned about this? And how does this person stack up to everybody else who hasn't had that time off? And so again, this isn't a necessarily a deal breaker. Talk about how to position it, but that's why the schools are going to always, prefer, if all else being equal, if there wasn't that gap year, um, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's no chance forward. Um, but I think what is important, the other thing that's really important is the schools want people who are continuously trying to find ways to grow and develop and push themselves, people who take initiative, people who don't necessarily wait for things to be given for them, but create those opportunities themselves, right? So if you have taken a career break, if you have had taken a gap year or something like that, how have you used your time? If you haven't used your time, it's not going to be additive at all to your candidacy. In fact, it's probably going to detract, right? Because if you think about where you are vis-a-vis your peers, if you have kind of not done anything for this past, the break, um, you have not been accelerating as much as your peers have, and nor have you been accruing experiences. Now, there are like many personal reasons too that you might take that gap year or a career break. It could be family members, could be your own mental health, what's going on. But, and even in those situations, likely you have been kind of, taking initiative to get better, taking initiative to take care of your family, whatever it might be. And that's a valid reason too. So part of this is just being honest about how you spent the time. If you are still in that gap year or time off, I would absolutely, my advice heading into it would always be make sure you are doing things that will help you continue to grow and develop as a professional, as a leader, as a team player, develop experiences that are going to be relevant again to what you ultimately bring to the classroom, right? So that'd be my advice if you're thinking about taking a career break. It's can be risky to do that. So just make sure that you are leveraging your time and finding ways to still develop, whether that's some volunteer work. I tend to really recommend getting involved with the community, not just like, oh, I was starting my own company on the side. It didn't go anywhere, but it was really fun. That's kind of a me effort. And I want, the schools really want to see people who are willing to give their time and energy to improve the world around them. So think about that as well. Okay, let's see what else we got. I have no work experience. I'm a fresh graduate. How can I make my profile stand out for the deferred program? This is TKV. I'm going to say TKV. Um, so the deferred programs are pretty interesting. Like I think they're a great opportunity. The way that so there's a few things to keep in mind. The and I haven't it's been a few years that I've seen this information posted as directly as it once was, but the former director of HBS admissions, Dee Leopold, she had shared some information at a moment saying, you know, the the acceptance rate for HBS's 2+2 deferral program is the same as it is for the overall application process. And I think people and I think even, like, the GMAT scores at the time was the same. I don't know. I don't know if I believe it would be the same now, um, but I think people read that and say, like, "Okay, like, yeah, 12, 10, 12% acceptance rate, I've got a good shot." But here's the thing to think about with the deferral programs, these early applicant ones, is, like, the people who apply are incredibly ambitious. Let me tell you, when I was a senior in college, I was not thinking about business school at all, right? I only started thinking about that a few years later. So the people, it is an incredibly driven, ambitious, and excellent candidate pool that applies for the 2+2. So yes, the overall acceptance rate might be the same, but man, it's like selecting selecting superstars out of a pool of superstars. That's it. So the chances are incredibly, if you are used to being a superstar, so is everybody else who's applying for those spots, and very few spots go. So like a lot of people are going to hear no for maybe the first time through these deferral programs. But okay, that's kind of like, but there's two kind of the silver lining there is, and why I still often encourage people to go for the 2+2 is like it's a great experience applying. Kind of the no is miserable, but you could get a yes. But the no is often is more common. But still, what it will do is give you a little bit more. I don't know. Like I said, as I said, I was not thinking of business school at all when I was in college. Had I been, I might have been even more intentional about the things that I did and my actions coming out of business school. So what I think the amount of reflection that you'll do if you are working on those 2+2 program applications is just be that much smarter of like, okay, what do I want my mark in the world to be? What have I done that has already prepared me to get there? What have been my most valuable learning experiences in terms of the kind of person I am and what I have achieved and what I'd like to achieve. So the way to stand out, you know, what there are, there's no like right answer. It's all going to depend on you, and I think that's just an important message for everybody. There's no one way to stand out, right? It's thinking about where are you at your best? When are you at your best? What's been most challenging for you? What have been those experiences that have pushed you to your limits, but you have prevailed? It's not as much about standing out, I think, or it is. Way to stand out is by really focusing on those stories that have most shaped you, and those stories that have most tested you, and those stories that you have prevailed in. They will be looking for excellence in your academics. They will be looking for evidence of leadership and impact, and just a general interest in the world around you. And I think I might sneeze, so excuse me. Well, it's gonna happen, right? It's live. It's gonna happen. Might be going away that. Oh, excuse me, everybody. So those are the things that I would say is really focus on those stories that make you you, and worry less about trying to stand out. When you focus on those things, you will stand out. It might feel a little Pollyanna of me to say that, like, or it might feel a little squishy or like, what does that mean? But that's the best offense in this process and the one that's going to make you shine the most in your application. Um, so I hope that helps. And then also like internships, if you are applying for the deferred program, internships, work experience, like all that should be on your resume regardless. It's fine. The For the deferred programs, they don't expect full-time work experience, but they will expect that you have some inkling of the impact that you want to have, and that you've already started to see evidence of that impact in your activities. So think about that. That would be my biggest advice there. Um, Ahmed, is GMAT enough for admission acceptance if college grades weren't good or poor? You know what I'm going to say here. It depends. It can be, but um, so there, the GMAT is never enough on itself by itself. Like it just isn't. It is not. I've heard. I know very little about law school and med school. That was never my angle. Though I have actually helped people on their applications, but I don't know enough about the application process. But from what I've heard, the test scores are so much more important in those programs, and like the kind of everything else is much less important. Where the everything else is still super important in the business school applications. And again, always kind of trying to take a step back, thinking about it from the school's perspective. The schools do look at your academic performance because they want to just see people who are intellectually driven, intellectually curious, people who pursue excellence. So if you don't have that, then they're going to have some doubts. The GMAT or GRE will help convince them that you have the raw smarts to succeed. But what they might have concerns about is your drive, right? Was it boredom? Was it, well, I didn't think it was important? Well, that those aren't really valid excuses. Well, they're definitely not, or they're valid excuses, but they're not going to help the admissions committee feel good about your academic transcript. So it depends on kind of how poor your academic experience was and how high that test score is above the average. That will be helpful. But then you also will want to show them ways and things that you were involved in that show that you're a superhero beyond academics. So this could be involvement in the community, involvement in campus, or even like taking harder courses and why you did that. So you can offset a not great experience in undergrad. But my other big advice is like certain schools, they don't need to make exception, right? The top schools, they'll just move on to the next applicant. And I don't say that to be harsh. It's just there are too many great applicants out there. So what you need to do then, if you are a kind of skewed applicant where you've got like a great test score, but you did not well in college in university, there's one other thing to suggest here. You've got to be extending that school list because you're going to be more of a curveball. Your average, if you average these two, one outlier, you get to the average, cool. But lots of the averages, folks, they won't get in. So it's less predictable what's going to happen. The one thing I would also say, if you have some specific courses that you did not do well in, especially really only business school related courses. So either quantitative courses or finance or accounting, things like that. Then you can also take those courses again. Um, take those courses again and prove to the school that you can commit and get the A as well. Thanks, Noel. I appreciate the positive feedback. That's great. Okay, so I hope that helps. So yeah, like it's like there is. Trust me, I often talk to people and be like, "Well, I'll get that high test score. That's the only thing that's holding me back." And I'm like, "No, that's not true. You're not doing anything in the community. You don't have you haven't been a superstar at work. Like it could work out, but you also need to be like mitigating that risk with more schools on your list. Okay. Okay, let's see. Uh, should my essays, and guys, now I'm sorry, I'm sniffling too. Should my essay show a clear picture of one specific industry that you want to be in postgrad, or is there a way to express your interest in multiple industries? Other programs have strengths with consulting, banking, PE. Do I adapt accordingly? This is a great question, Joshua, and it depends. It depends, but I generally think this is me of like just having coached for a lot of years and thinking a little bit about the bigger picture. I like pretty much want you to dig deep. I'm looking at my stomach, I'm looking at my core because that's what I want you to think about and really think about what inspires you. What do you want to do? Um, and I am not a believer in changing your goals for per school. So if a school is strong in private equity, but you want to go into consulting, write about private equity, I mean, like I because I think it's going to be just harder for you to get behind one avenue and stick with it. You're going to be tested on your goals in your interview, in the application process, and it's also it's just if probably if you're like, oh, if I apply to this school, I want to say PE. This one I'm going to say banking. This one I say consulting. It, I don't know. It just makes me feel like you haven't done enough soul searching. There's a caveat to this. I'll get to it, but like you haven't done enough soul searching to really figure out why you're going to business school and what you need it for. And I recognize that lots of people might be going to business school to open doors, and I got that. I get it. I that like business school changed my life. I would have never gone to Bain. I would have never had a shot at getting to Bain and Company had I not gone to business school. So I understand that it can and will open doors that you don't even know about right now. But what I so I'm going off on a tangent on this. I would not say, okay, because this school is good at consulting, I'm going to write about it in consulting, just because, like, also, like, then you're trying to fit the mold. And I would argue every school wants every kind of candidate and every kind of candidate going to every kind of industry afterwards. So even if a school is great at PE, it still has hungry mouths to feed for consulting and banking and vice versa. The exception might be private equity. That is, recruiting for private equity is harder, is going to be more at a smaller subset of schools unless you're willing to hustle. That's probably a finer level of conversation than we have time for. But the other thing I would say is if you are curious about a number of things, like I would try to figure out what connects them. So maybe you are working in a certain industry, one industry. Maybe you're in corporate, you're in like the transportation industry. Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking airlines or trains or something. And you are really interested in helping, you want to broaden your horizon outside of this industry. And so, as such, because like your long term goals, I don't know what your long term goals are. Maybe they are to be a leader of a growing big organization. But before you commit to it, airlines, for example, you want to like gain exposure to other industries with the goal of either bringing that intel back to the airline industry, it's pretty complex, or doing your own thing. There, you could say your short term is either investment banking or consulting, potentially. This is a little risky. Are some risks of doing this, but if that were really your goal, I'm pretty much always like, as long as the goal is believable, that's probably your best bet. Um, because both of those would give you exposure to industries. Or you think about which one you're leaning more to, because investment banking, I actually think that's a very valid argument, but there's a lot of um, overlap when it comes to recruiting. So really think about, okay, so if you're really going for industry exposure, just think about which one is more exciting to you, investment banking or consulting. Keep in mind, once you're there, you might realize like, oh my God, I wrote consulting, but I really do think banking's more my style. Go for it. But the schools, you know, they want to make sure you have a plan now that is going to reach your goals. And if you're showing too much, like, I don't know, I want to do this, that, or the other, they're going to be nervous that you have enough of a plan to take advantage of the resources they have. This is like, Joshua, this is like, definitely, I will say this across the board. And I know that GMAT Club just posted a little thing about a free consultation with me. A lot of this really does depend. So I would say reach out for a free consultation with Gatehouse. Our team is amazing. I brought some other slides. I'm just gonna I'll flip up to this one right now so you can see. But then we can really help you think like, okay, based on your experiences, it feels like consulting, or based on your long term, it feels like consulting is a better play, or investment banking than private equity. But those are just some thoughts on the career goals. But I don't usually adapt per school. With some caveats, you just might have to explain that you're gonna hustle a little bit more. Okay, hopefully that helped, Joshua. How we doing on time? Gosh, I'm talking too much. I got a lot of questions. I'm gonna go faster. Um, okay, I think Javish, we already talked about offsetting an average GPA, and positions of responsibility, extracurriculars that absolutely can help. But remember, they have to, they're going to have lots of candidates that have everything. So you just have to be ready for that and make sure that you plan accordingly. And that usually means including some safer options. How do we choose a recommender if we come from a family business background? Is another member from the team qualified? This is Shreya. Shreya, that's always a tricky thing. It can absolutely be from a different team member. It kind of depends like what the reporting structure is, but it can be with somebody that you're not related to that is still working inside the family business. It could also be, in this case, you could also think about offsetting it or augmenting that perspective with, could be a client, or it could be from a extracurricular that you're really involved in. There's pros and cons on who to choose for that second one, but there can be ways through strategic selection that can like mitigate concerns of like, oh, there's like kind of familiar bias in this first letter of recommendation, but oh, here's this other one that says many of the same things but is not obviously a family member. So there's ways to do it, but I mean, you never want a direct family member writing yours, but somebody else on the team can can be one, and then you can use that other one strategically to reinforce or just give them a viewpoint that they're going to know is not biased. Okay, I have 8 years of work experience as a software developer. Can you please suggest if I'm a suitable candidate to apply for MIT, Stanford, Harvard? How can I portray my work to be considered for the MBA program? It depends. I would say in general, software developers that's great. You have a skill. In terms of like how can you portray your work to be considered, you know, I think the thing about software development is that the schools really want to see, right, all the same things: initiative, leadership. They want to make sure that you can work well with others, right? That you're not so like down in the weeds all the time. That you're not able to like take a step back and understand how these things fit in the work that you're doing fit into the bigger picture. Those are the things that they're going to try to be assessing as they review your application. But there will be a lot of software developers in Sloan's, GSB's, and HBS's class. It's kind of like really, I often also think about when you really hit the ball out of the park, but it's not necessarily like, oh, I came up with this really cool coding solution. Um, think about the time where it's been hard for you to implement those coding solutions, for example, where you had to gather a lot of buy-in from different stakeholders and coach people on the changes, or really deal triage during sort of like a software break or something like that. Those could be things, angles to play. But I would say, based on your background, that's not a reason not to apply. It kind of like it's no different than being a consultant or working at a hospital in a sort of like strategy role, or FP&A or financial planning analysis role. None of these are better or worse than another in this application process. All have strengths, all have weaknesses. What's always most important is showing those experiences when you've been at your best, but then just being thoughtful of like showing the schools that it's not just smarts, you know how to play well with others as well. And all right, guys, I know there's so many questions and I just want to keep answering all of them. I love this stuff, as I hope you can tell. So, given we're just at 3 minutes out, I'm going to take a few more, see what I can do. But I would just say definitely sign up for a free consultation. It's right at our website, gatehouseadmissions.com. There's a little like request a free consultation. I encourage you to do it. Our team of Marcus, Eric, and Rachel, they're dynamite. They've seen it all, they've done it all, and they love working. We love what we do. We love helping people share what's best of them in this application process. Because I also say all this because I know I'm not going to answer all your questions because we're going to run out of time. But so do that. But I'm going to do some more and see what I can answer. Okay. Where was I? We answered. Hello, this question is for Sloan application. Go Sloan, go Sloan. If I've already submitted my application with my current GRE score, but end up retaking the GMAT, can I submit a new score if it's hired? So if it's hired, can I resubmit it and will it be considered? I think the answer, it depends on the school, quite frankly, but I think Sloan is pretty friendly to that. I would absolutely, if you get it, even if they say no, here's the thing, email them the score, let them know how you did, ask them to consider it. And even if they're like, oh, we can't accept that now that you've accepted it, but you've told them that score, it's stuck in their head. They saw the score, and that might influence their decision. So I would, at the very minimum, it shows that you're still pushing, you're still growing. So I would absolutely share it. Whether or not, how they're going to evaluate it, don't even worry about that. Like, share the good news, let them figure out if they can consider it or not. Okay, but that was a good question. I like that one. All right, what else we got? How many times do we have to send the score report to the school, since there is a very short amount of time, a duration where we send report, and I've not decided in schools yet. So this is just kind of a technicality, and I think the question is like I don't know which schools, and I've taken the test a while ago, but I don't want to send it to them. It's going to take a while. Don't worry about it. Like, literally, do not worry about it. You can give them a school. Sorry, you can, when you're hitting submit, you can you will actually be asked to enter in your self-reported top score. And then as soon as you hit submit, you can email or whatever. I'm sure it's not calling, like fill in the little application form on GRE or the GMAT site, and have them send it. On the back end now, it's wicked fast. They're just gonna transfer it over. They have like, some platform software thing to do it. Nice and easy. So your focus should be getting that score where it needs to be and figuring out what schools you need to apply to. But even if you're not like they don't have the scores, the official scores when you hit submit, that's fine. But you have to at that point then do it. Okay. I hope that makes sense. How to ace the essays for Sloan as the Sloan has a concise application. This is Javish. Oh, I encourage you to check out. I'm sure I've hosted such a session here on GMAT Club in the past, and the essay questions haven't changed that much. I'm pretty sure I have. I know I've done one on the interview, and I'm pretty sure I've done one on the essays. But what I would say is, that, oh, we're at. I know we're gonna end. I'm probably gonna pop out in 1 second. Um, uh, Check out our website, check out our essay analysis, follow, you'll see lots of videos. Sometimes GMAT Club shares them. I'm grateful for that. On Gatehouse admissions, we're on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and I do a lot on all the essays. And we definitely have a whole session on Sloan's essays on our YouTube channel, and for all the other essays as well, too, or schools as well. Guys, I hope this was so helpful. This was fun. I know I talk a lot, but I hope I gave you like I want to answer all the questions and want to be comprehensive. But I think we are out of time at this point. And oh, and I appreciate you guys throwing some comments in the comment box too. So enjoy the rest of this event. Thank you so much to GMAT Club for hosting it. It's a really special opportunity for you guys to have a chance to talk to the schools, admissions counselors, everything, and really get your head in the game as you're applying to business school. And please, please do reach out to Gatehouse Admissions if you have any follow-up questions, if you want to get some more personalized input. We are here to help, and I will be rooting for all of you. Obviously, for those of you applying to Sloan, but any of the schools, I'll be rooting for you. And I think with that, that's it.